Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam amma ba'da habita fillah. A question was posed from one of our brothers in Pakistan, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him and preserve us. He said, here in Pakistan, some of Ahl Hadith brothers have this thought in mind that ulama or students of knowledge in Saudi can't give their own opinion based on Quran and authentic Sunnah, and they are restricted by the hukam of Saudi. So we'll answer that first, and then we'll talk about the second part of the question. So first, we have to realize that Saudi, like many Muslim countries, are not necessarily open societies. But with that being said, to make this is a type of slander of the ulama of Ahl Sunnah to say that they're hiding the truth or saying that we know the implications of these are old shubahat that many of the takfiris and many other groups have regarding, and many of the sururis and other kutubist sects, that they are kutubist groups, I should say, not necessarily that they're sects, so to speak, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but that they have these shubahat. And they tend to say that the scholars of Ahl Sunnah in these countries are tied and restricted by the government, and then they hide the truth and all these other kind of things, all these other kind of shubahat. In fact, they are just shubahat, doubtful things, because we know, and having studied in a place where it's much more open, like in Yemen, where they were much less restricted in their speech compared to where it would be the situation here in Saudi, where you have a Muslim government that does not encourage necessarily free speech and so forth. With that being said, it does not compromise the status of the ulama. That does not compromise the status, nor does it compromise the ilm that they're putting out. But rather, what you'll find from the scholars of Ahl Sunnah is that they know from the usul of Ahl Sunnah that it's not that usul is not to criticize the government, and they know from the usul of Ahl Sunnah that that it is not to rebel against the government, and they know from the usul of Ahl Sunnah that it is not to belittle or destroy the status of the government. So they operate here in Saudi Arabia in accordance with the hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam, or two hadith I want to mention. The hadith of Abi Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, where he said, سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وسلم يقول إنما من رأى منكم منكرا فليغيره بيد فإن لم يستطع فبلسانه فإن لم يستطع بقلبه وذلك أضعف الإيمان. رواه Muslim. The hadith in Sahih Muslim, which the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever sees a munkar, then change it with his hand, and if he's unable to do so, then change it with his tongue, and if he's unable to do, then change it with his heart. And this is the weakest form of iman. That the scholars here of Ahl Sunnah that are ma'ruf bi Sunnah, that are ma'ruf to adhere to the Salafi minhaj, that they speak to the government about things that they view that are mistakes in the society, or that they believe that the government should correct, or what have you. This is well known. And there are many rasail from the previous scholars that are collected, and rasail meaning letters and so forth, and likewise even our scholars that you may not openly see the things, but they illustrate that. Like once Ben Uthaymeen was asked about this issue. One of the students or one of the questioners said, "Why don't you make inkar, or advise the government, da 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 da." So he was blasting Ben Uthaymeen, and Ben Uthaymeen, was related, a well-known story. He bowed his head and he began to cry, and he just said, "We do." So these are the things that you don't see, that the people don't see, because they don't do it mostly outwardly. Mostly outwardly they don't do it. Why? What is the hikmah? Because in accordance with a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that Imam al-Albani said is Hasan, or authenticated, is that the taking the sultan by the hand, by when you advise the leader, that you advise him by the hand, and the infinite amount of wisdom, and that we see in accordance with the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah, the wisdom behind that. Because if these were just openly criticizing the leader, of course that's going to cause in this status amongst the general people of the society that would cause the status of the leader to be questioned or to perhaps belittled. And especially if they're not just advising openly, but if they are opposing them on certain things, saying, why do you have this, and accusing them and so forth, even if they're correct, that this can cause a great fitna and harm to spread out through the society. So rather, the best way, especially when dealing with the government, and the scholars have written extensively about this, is to do these things behind closed doors. And we already rest assured, and even some of our scholars have recently come out and written some things outwardly about in advice for the leaders to take certain actions regarding certain situations within the society. Some scholars, some imams of Ahlul Sunnah that are here, Salafi scholars that are well known, and there's no harm that has befallen them, walillah alhamd, and on top of that, they are respected, and this was, and this is from their hikmah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. The point being is that these are shubahat that a lot of the people who wish to belittle the ulama of Ahlul Sunnah, that they say these things. The second point that you made, in the second hadith that we want to mention in regards to this is amongst the many ahadith. Just open up Kitab al-Imara in Sahih Muslim. For example, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Sami wa ta'a ala Maryam Muslim fima yuhibbu wa kariya ma lam yu'miru bi ma'siyatin fa idha umira bi ma'siyatin fala sam'a wa la ta'a." The Prophet ﷺ said that hearing and obey the Muslim ruler in that which you love and that which you hate, as long as they don't command you to do sinfulness. And if they command you to do sinfulness, there's no hearing and there's no obeying. Meaning there's no hearing and there's no obeying in those commands of ma'asi, of those sinful commands, but you still keep the obedience and the ties of being obedient to the Muslim ruler, as long as they're still Muslim. As long as they're still Muslim, practicing the deen and establishing the salat in the land. And on top of that, there's many other conditions. If we open up other babs, like talking about khuruj, ala hukam, and stuff like this, which is outside of our scope right now. But this is the point. As far as the second part of your question, you said, and secondly, some brothers think that the KSA things are bad, and you can openly see masiyah, like songs and men without beard and women without proper hijab. I have no idea, since I don't live in Saudi Arabia. What do you think about these issues? Do you think it's just people's view, or do you think it is really that reality as well? Very important for us to understand that first I would ask those people and say, well, you're in Pakistan. Do you see people properly wearing hijab? And I'm sure they would, if they're honest. And do you see open sins? And if they're honest, they'll have to say, well, yeah, Pakistan is well known, unfortunately, in, I believe it's Islamabad, from many people that I've talked to who've been there or from there, say the biggest, and I don't like to publicize it, but that there's some big places of sinfulness that are well known, and we already know, especially from the elite, wealthy people and so forth, and the trends that they tend to take. They're in Pakistan. So ask them about that first. And then ask them about the rest of the world, not just the Muslim world, but even the rest of the world. But of course, we're concerned with the Muslim world, with what is the topic we're talking about. And you won't find a place that does not contain sin. And then better than that, ask them about the time of the Prophet ﷺ, who is the best of examples, who we follow, whose sunnah we're ordered to follow, who we are ordered to obey as we're ordered to obey Allah. Ati Allah wa ati Rasul. Obey Allah and obey his messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What happened in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? There was adultery, there was drinking, there was open sin. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ gave us those commands on how to deal with those things. That's never going to cease. Now, getting back to Saudi Arabia, my view, not having traveled the world, but having lived here for almost probably about 15 years on and off, that I would say in Saudi Arabia, out of the places I've traveled to, I've lived in Yemen, I've been to the UAE, I've been to Ethiopia, I've been to Morocco, I've been to Lebanon, I've been to Syria, I've been to Egypt, Canada, anyway, and Indonesia. So I've seen, and I haven't seen anything like Saudi Arabia, and nor do I believe that there is, in my view, and I think this is what the evidence shows us, is it's the best by far, without doubt. Like nothing is even close, really, to what you have in Saudi Arabia, just for the fact that the prayer is established. I recall reflecting on that many times, coming back from my vacation and landing. The airplane landed exactly at Fajr, and coming down the runway ramp when it's Fajr. And you can see Shuruq, see the light coming, or coming in the light of Fajr. You can just barely light, and hearing the adhan, and rushing to prayer. The first thing before even going through customs, you won't find that anywhere else. That the malls, everywhere, the salat is established. Are there women who don't wear hijab? Yes, of course there are. Is there open ma'asi, like drinking and alcohol? Absolutely not. I've never seen that. I've never seen anyone, I can say honestly, and I've lived here 15 years, I've never seen anyone that I knew was drunk or high. I never saw it. I haven't seen, so I would say again, it is the best, and especially because it's a land established on Tawheed. And you have many ulama of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah that called it Kitabillah wa Sunnat Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, called it Tawheed, which you don't have that in many other Muslim countries. You will find no grave worshipping outwardly here. You will find no, many of the things that you find, unfortunately, in many other Muslim countries where you see open ma'asi. You go to many Muslim countries, you'll find bars, you'll find venues and nightclubs, you'll find all those things. Some are more, as they say, popping than places we have in the West. Okay? The point being what? That there's sin everywhere. And the sin will not cease. But however, this is the best. So why would you criticize the best and not get to the rest? So that's my advice to those brothers. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with ilm nafi, rizq tayyib wa amal mutaqabbalan. Anything I said that was correct was from Allah Azza wa Jalla. Anything I said that was incorrect was from myself, the shaitan. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.